And I say set appointments with yourself and keep them like they're with the governor or the president or whatever, whoever the most important person you think is. Those those calendar appointments are with that person, and you have to show up.
Angel, thank you for joining me on our Thought Leader Spotlight series. I'm your host over here, Matt Camp, head of partnerships at DealMachine. And on these, we really like to shine a spotlight on industry experts like yourself, hear your inspiring stories, and have you educate our audience on how you see the world evolving. So today, really excited to welcome on Angel Hagen. Man, I hated cutting off your story. You were telling me kind of your background, how you got into this. You had a really, love to hear how many different professional experiences you've had, and then the last like 6-7 years you really got into real estate. Can you tell our audience here now, what that journey was like, how you found real estate, and love to be able to kind of give people that guidance to begin with.
Yeah, so I come from a mental health background. I worked in state government for about 12 years, and in the mental health substance use department. I also worked for insurance, managed our contracts with big insurance companies. And so mental health and substance use was my passion. It was always, help people, being able to help people who were in difficult situations. And so my husband, he was in construction. And in 2009, he actually was hurt and couldn't do his trade any longer. And so we were really looking for somewhere to connect him, get him something that
Mm-hmm.
fulfilled him. And I really fell in love with it. And I was excited about it. So we decided to jump in with both feet. We really didn't know what we were doing. And, we're still learning every day. We're still trying to figure it out. So we've been doing it about 7 years. We started in when I
Mm-hmm.
still had a full time job. So now I am doing this full time. So both of us are doing it full time.
Amazing.
And we're continuing to make changes to our business and uh, move with the market, move with kind of what's going on, move with our passions.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what has shifted me the most in our business is as you try to figure it out, everybody says, do it this way, do it this way, do this, do this. You want to do this, you want to do short-term rentals, you want to flip houses. And, instead of going and trying all of that out, I'm like, wait a minute, let's kind of go through because what I do in coaching is goal setting and business vision.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, what is your vision and what's your passion? And what are your core
Mm-hmm.
values? And then how does that apply to your business? And do you even want a business? I mean, some people may just want to invest.
Yeah.
And so part of what I do in coaching, and it's not real estate specific, but it's really helping people get clear on what it is that they want to do. And I had to do that for myself, and continue to dial that in. So
Love that. Yeah, yeah, I think you're right too. I mean, we're in a world now where you can take in so much information. There's so many different ways you can take real estate. I mean, there's so many different niches and approaches, and there's always kind of that potential shiny object syndrome. That's awesome to hear. You kind of sit back and really think about setting goals first instead of just chasing the next good idea, right?
yes. Yeah. And it's like, what do you enjoy doing? And what I
Mhm.
found really quickly in the entrepreneur world, because I come from a corporate world and there's a team of people. You work in a place where there's a team of people and you all have your roles and you can get really good at your role. And when you start a business like this, you're not good at everything. And, people say,
Mhm.
well, you need to outsource. Well, I don't have any money. How do I outsource? How do I take that next step? And how do I figure out the stuff that I'm not good at until I get there? And so, helping people sort through some of those things is really important because otherwise we just crash around. We crash around and try to
Yeah.
figure it out. But, the team is really important. And that's why I think communities are important in this space because coming from the corporate world, that was the one thing that I missed. I was like, I really miss my team. I miss having somebody, down
Hmm.
the hall that I could go, before COVID anyways, you go down the hall and talk to
Right.
somebody. Say, "How you doing? How are the kids?" Have that conversation. COVID did change that
Hmm.
for people, but you can still connect online even. And that's important, I
Hmm.
think. It's important for people to have not just a big community, because we get lost in that, especially those of us who are introverts. We might get lost in big communities, but having a small surrounding of people, who are kind of your team, even if they aren't,
Hmm.
that's important.
Yeah. I know you mentioned you had that corporate background and you worked a variety of jobs before you kind of landed in the real estate space. There's a fair number of people that I think I would resonate with listening to this that, are coming from a 9 to 5 or maybe, doing some gig work and trying to figure out like, how do I transition from that into real estate? Do you have any advice there on, quitting that 9 to 5, that W-2 and getting into this full time, like that journey and lessons you've learned along the way?
So plan for it. I was sort of prepared for it, but not completely. My corporate office was going through a lot of transition, whole new leadership, seeing a lot of people come and go. And the people, we know how corporations work. New leadership comes in, everybody that has history exits. And so I was preparing myself for that. But I wasn't completely prepared. I mean, really have to prepare financially for, what are you going to do when you don't have that check coming every 2 weeks? What are you going to do for health care? What are you going to do for all these things? Don't wait until like the last minute and then go, "Oh, what do I do?" Plan for that. So that would be one thing that, I had a goal. So my goal was to work myself out of a job. And so then you start working towards that goal. How are you going to do that? And you have to be realistic about that, because it's probably not going to be through buying rentals unless you have a whole lot of money to keep putting in, because that's going to take a long time, because that's a long-term wealth builder is rentals. So you may get some cash flow, but is that really going to replace your income? Because if you're in a corporate world making, say, gross 10,000 a month, how are you going to replace that with real estate? What's your plan, and how are you going to execute it?
Hmm.
Because the idea is only one thing. People fall down at execution. And it's about habits. It's about, having the same kind of habits and coming to work for yourself in the same way that you would for somebody else. Because what I found was I had to
Yeah.
start having conversations with myself about, wait a minute, if this was your corporate job, you would be there. And, yet as an entrepreneur, we want freedom and we don't want to do things and we don't want to have habits and we don't want to have schedules. You still need that until you get to a certain point in your business where you can delegate most of that stuff, that operational stuff, to others. But you still have to show up for yourself and have time blocks for yourself. And I say set appointments with yourself and keep them like they're with the governor or the president or whatever, whoever the most important person you think is. Those calendar appointments are with that person, and you have to show up.
Hmm. Love that. Yeah. Do you think, I mean, I know you mentioned, and you talked about this here, helping people, is your passion, truly. And that's, I
Yeah.
think, that's clear in how you approach real estate. It's clear in how you approach your coaching. When you're going through and helping people, especially like students and things that are maybe newer to the real estate game, what are some of those initial light bulb moments? Like, are there a couple of things that you can really point to of like, oh man, this clicked and then they were, on the right path, or this clicked and they unlocked a new level in their business? Like, what are those kind of light bulb moments you see early on in a path that maybe our audience could try to get to sooner than later?
I think the most important thing for people is your own managing your own self, getting to know your own self, who you are, what your strengths and weaknesses are, and creating habits. Operations are habits. We all have them. We get up in the morning, we go, we make our pot of coffee, maybe in the same way. We drive to work. If we're going somewhere, we drive in the same direction all the time. We're creatures of habits. So we have to create habits around those things that are going to be most important to get us to our goal. Um, and there are some resources that I use to kind of set that path and recommend for people to set some of those paths. And one is the Four Disciplines of Execution. It's a book. We had at the state when I worked there, we had a hospital. So we ran the state mental health hospitals, and at one of the hospitals, this book was used to implement operations and totally turn things in a great direction. But it's really about identifying the one or two things that are most important, and making the focus on those, because the rest of the stuff is whirlwind. It's like your whirlwind of life and business
Mhm.
and all of these things coming at
For
you,
sure.
emails and people calling you and all that stuff that you still have to deal with. But you have
Mhm.
to have the block of time to focus on the things that are going to be most important to get you to the goals. And you have to protect those, like with your life, like your child, and don't give them up, and you'll eventually get there. So
Love that. Yeah. Do you well, one, really appreciate you coming on. This has been awesome to kind of get people that right mindset, especially trying to do, transition from that job into real estate full time. One thing I thought that was really interesting was how sounds like you and you said, how long have you been married with your husband?
we've been together for 15 years.
Amazing. Congratulations. It sounds like you have an awesome partnership there in business as well. Is there, one last thing I wanted to ask about was that relationship and how to really work with a spouse, how to get into, real estate's definitely something that I know when, for me doing it, I need to have my wife on board with everything I'm doing. Like, do you have any lessons learned on working with a spouse there that, our audience might, find valuable too?
Yeah, I think having communication and kind of separating the business and the personal things, because
Mhm.
it's like when you have a meeting with your business partner, even though it's your husband or your wife, it's still business. And so time block that
Right.
and have that meeting just like you would in a corporate environment. Set it up just like that, because otherwise it's like all of this is all mixed in your life, and you get irritated with each other because I'm knocking on the door saying, well, did you mow the lawn over there? Do we have somebody to do this over at this rehab? And he's like, I don't know. I haven't called them. And, the other thing is kind of stick to your lane and find a way to be able to trust
Mhm.
each other. And, he has his own way of dealing with things. And I do not deal with things in the same way he does. But if it's his lane, I have to let go of some of that sometime and go, okay, just take a deep breath. It'll be okay. And just let it go. And so he may deal with a contractor differently than I do. He communicates differently. And
Mhm.
so those kinds of things though are important, because if I intervene, then he's like, well, you just do it. I'm like, no, 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 I don't want to do that. I'll back off because I don't want more to do. And
Yep.
so, yeah, so find your lanes, and then have those conversations set, set up. So we have a check in, that we have scheduled on the calendar. And, that's where we will go through things. And that doesn't mean we don't trip up and don't sometimes, bug each other about different things. But we try to keep that focus in that time and put things on that list and then go through it just like we would if we were meeting with a CEO of a company, or if we were part of an executive team at a corporation. And that really helps because it helps you have your personal life separate from your work.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Angel. This is super. I mean, I think like very, very relatable for a lot of people watching through this.
Yeah.
Appreciate you kind of sharing what's brought you to this point today. What's the best way our audience can connect with you as well? I know you have like coaching going on, a couple things you can do to be helpful.
Yeah. So I'm all over the place. People can find me out on social media, everywhere. But my phone number is 816-535-0076. My email is angel@mastiffhomebuyers.com. So they can reach out to me that way. And I hope maybe
Awesome.
people will be willing to come and join, the community that I have on Facebook. And I'm always trying to promote, ideas and mindset and wealth building. And we're about building internal and external wealth. So I hope that maybe
Love it.
it'll resonate with people and help.
Yeah, well, we'll link to all that below. Angel, really appreciate you coming on, sharing all this, and really
Yeah.
enjoyed the conversation.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm
Fantastic.
excited. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, and to everyone watching over here, this is Matt Camp with Deal Machine, and happy deal finding.